Good morning, all you people in the big bad world. This is Liz coming to you live from our command center. And I guess it won't be live for you once I post this. But typically, I post something on the weekend, and I'm sorry I was unable to do that. And that's one thing I want to talk about today is disappointment. So, a few weeks ago, I was looking at Alex and Layla Harmosi's things online, and I saw the acquisition.com workshops that they put on. Well, this is for multi-million dollar owners. It's not for me. And so I went on there and I thought, hey, I'm going to go on and see if I actually approve for anything to be able to come to this event. So I set up 2 times in the morning that would work for me, and they were like, 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. It was super early in the morning, and their person never showed up to my call. And so I was like, man, I don't know what to do. So I made a video and I told him who I was, what we do, and what our future plans were, type thing, and that I know that I don't really qualify, but I would love to come and just soak up the knowledge and learn. And I knew that it would be huge for me to be able to come and that they would unlikely accept me. So I got this email right away from my video, and it was like the guy in charge of the workshop. And he said that he was so sorry that the person hadn't gotten back to me or showed up to my phone calls, and that had been taken care of. Well, what I assumed happened is because it's so early in the morning, the people who are supposed to be on call for these calls probably overslept. So he said maybe this was why, but I was thrilled beyond belief. They said they would accept me to be able to come. So I've been super excited, and I was supposed to go last week, and I spent the night in Seattle. I was, and then when I woke up in the morning at 4, I woke up at 3, and I got this text that my flight was canceled, but it said, oh, but there's another flight scheduled for you. So I thought I would go at 12 in the afternoon. So I thought I'll go at 7 in the morning just in case there is any issues. So I went at 7 in the morning, waited till 2 in the afternoon. They canceled that flight. And the next one I could get would be the next day, which means I would miss all of the first day of the workshop, which is silly. And it had said there were no refunds, but if there's like a decent reason, they would reschedule. So I thought that maybe other people would have the same situation. So I was super disappointed. I had prepared all the numbers and everything that I would need. And from when my workshop, all the numbers and the workbook he had, I was bringing with me. And I was so excited to learn. And it was such a rare opportunity. So I know a little bit about disappointment. Had to admit, I cried a little bit. But I came back to work, and today is the day that I should have been there. So I apologize I didn't post an interview or anything. I did have a topic which I'm going to share with you today, but it couldn't happen. I was dealing with all of that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about disappointment today in regards to an owner, a team member, or a GM, technicians out in the field, etc., and what it's like when you're quote unquote demoted or you feel demoted, and the positives behind that to maybe give you a little bit of encouragement. So I'll give you a few examples. So we had one of our corporate locations where some things were a little crazy, and we had to switch up GMs, and a lot of times, and you'll experience this, you look through your whole crew of technicians and you think the very best one, like all the options you have, you're going to pick somebody from there because they know the most about the company and the most about the work and all of the equipment and the systems for your company. And so you pull them up and you put them in a place of leadership. And what you're looking for are people that have been working on self-improvement, really have caught the vision of your company and what you're trying to do. And that is the person that you tend to elevate. Sometimes, though, they're not ready, or they're not really fit for that position. Some people are great in the field, but they are managers. They're not leaders. And so you can manage a location where you live and work and stuff, but that doesn't mean they're going to be able to inspire people and motivate people to come up to higher level and perform. So we put a person that was a technician in as the GM, and then the whole thing went south. So they were trying their best, but sometimes people try their very best, but they weren't meant for certain positions. And so we had to pull that GM out, and he admitted, like, I can't do this. It's too hard. Follow up calls and all that kind of thing. It makes me so nervous to do them. And he couldn't catch the whole idea of needing to get business on the schedule. And like, you got to work on it constantly to work your leads. So what we did is we moved him back to the other location. So he wasn't the GM anymore, but we moved him to another corporate location, which for you, this might be moving them from the GM back into the technician role. And so for him, he got back in the technician role, but it was very hard. So to go back to lower pay, and some things had happened while he was the GM that it wasn't a positive thing to quote unquote demote him. A truck had caught on fire, and we hadn't been told. Every truck was full of junk and trash, and nothing was taken care of. There were weeds all over the property that hadn't been treated. And what we do is give each GM the autonomy to run the company as if they are the owner. And so that definitely wasn't happening. There was no pride of ownership in that GM. So we told him that he was coming back as a technician to the other location, and he just didn't have a good attitude. So eventually he looked for another job. We really needed him to go. And so it was mutual that he was going to go out and maybe start his own thing. He was an amazing mechanic and could fix anything. So he got a job with another company, and that was good and that was best. And we made that as positive as possible. However, you never know what that person is telling their spouse. And so we had franchisee training one day, and we were at a lunch for them. And I get this phone call from his wife. And I had never spoken to her at all. But, I had seen them on Facebook and when they had a baby and everything. Actually, I did meet her once. They had come in with the baby. And so she knew who I was. So she was like, this is so unfair. And he's been demoted and all of this. And I said, well, what has he told you? And I told her that, or she told me. And I said, well, it's a little bit different than that. And I was just gently honest and told her what had happened and that it was definitely justified and that it had to happen, this quote unquote demotion. And she agreed with me, thanked me so much. And I told her this is the kind of support he needs. And I gave her some tips on supporting him right now, but has to be accountability for people's actions. So that was one example I wanted to share with you. Another one is if you do have a great team member and they're kicking butt and they're on top of their game and they have caught the vision of the company and they're going for it, but you put them in a GM position. Let's say you open another location, or you need a GM to step up, like the owner is moving out into estimates and sales only. Well, that GM is great, and you're going to put him in the position and he's going to do great. However, if he has personal issues that he doesn't have control of, he is going to have trouble being the GM and leading a team and thinking like an owner and running the location. So this particular one had a drinking problem. And so he was young. He'd go out and party and do all his thing. And then he got a DUI and got in trouble with the law. And so what do you do in that situation? You have to pull them out of the role. Not only are they unfit for the role, unfit to lead, and if they're drinking on the job, I don't know that he was, but he had the drinking issue, we can't have him leading the team. So there was a conversation with him. He loved the company. He wanted to stay with the company, and he agreed that he was not the person to do it at that time until he reproved himself and got himself together and got some help. So he was actually grateful, and he came back in the field as a technician. And then it gave the opportunity for other people that had been watched and had been listening to Audible and doing their best to prepare themselves to be a GM or go to a higher level in the company. It gave them the opportunity to move up and have an opportunity for themselves. And maybe this other young man that had been demoted, that he would appreciate the opportunity that he didn't get fired and be able to come back stronger and better. And he is doing very well. So you can't say that a demotion or what you think is a demotion is always a negative thing. Most of the time, it doesn't work out, but there are times. We have another situation where great team member. The whole thing himself was very good. He seemed the perfect fit. A location was opened, and he was given the opportunity right away. He had worked with some incredible employee before him who had trained him well, and it just wasn't long enough. So he had only been trained for a couple months, and here he gets put in this position to actually go after leads, sell jobs, run crews, and it was just too much for him. And a lot of times when the company's small, you're out there doing routes and jobs by yourself while you're still trying to do estimates and close other jobs. So it's a very heavy load. And he came forward to his manager and said, I just can't handle the pressure. Like, I'm not ready for this. I need more time to get better. And so he wanted to go back with the other gentleman who had trained him and work in the field as a technician for a longer period of time. So the one that was in the field that had been excellent and had been training, we were able to have him run a couple locations because he was doing so well. And then this young man was back as a technician, somebody that he could trust and could work with and can continue training under him. So that was another positive one that turned out positive. Another one that can be very difficult is when you are the owner and you have worked really hard to get technicians, and you've spent all your time inspiring them and leading them and providing resources to make them incredible, and they have put the effort in and they have become GMs for you. But then you are buying equipment, you're getting in debt, you are wanting to buy other businesses, you're entrepreneurial. So you want to keep moving on and building, growing what you have and building other locations, maybe. And what can happen is you get into a lot of debt, and you're incredibly amazing with your team. You're generous. You do offsites. You help take care of their families. You understand the burden of command, and you've taken that on, and you are there to support their families. And and you, as the owner, let's say you're not even doing the estimates anymore, like you're completely out of the field, which has left you to be able to work on the business instead of in the business. And you're starting to get really stressed, and you're supposed to be this leader. You're supposed to be on top of your game. You're supposed to have all the answers, but you know inside yourself that the business is going backwards. And so you have to make the hard decisions to maybe talk to somebody who has more experience than you. They can go through your P&L and your numbers and your debt, and they can help you put together a great plan. And I actually recommend more of the in-depth kind of things that Mike puts out. Mike Andes, if you're listening to this, you know who he is anyway. All the way from the older stuff till now, it's like having a personal counselor, a personal coach to help you with your business. And some of it's going to seem in the weeds, and it's not going to seem to apply or even make sense to you sometimes. But then you're going to get into this other situation later, and it's all going to, the pieces that you've learned all through time are going to start coming together and making sense. And you can also book a call with Mike. His time's pretty valuable, but you can book a call with him on MikeAndes.com and have that personal one-on-one time, which is definitely worth the money if you need to make a big switch and a radical turn in your business. and he can walk you through those steps. But if you can't afford that, just listen to the content till something clicks, till something can help you. Read the turnaround book and pretend you're the person that needed the turnaround and follow the advice, because you are learning vicariously through other people's mistakes. And so the point is, you might have to actually go out in the field. Your GMs who are 100% estimators now and not working in the field, they might have to go back in the field. You would have to have a candid conversation with them. We have spent money, we have gone in debt so we can have all this equipment so we can do these projects and jobs. Maybe we need to simplify things. Maybe we need to sell some of this equipment. Maybe we need to back off in some services we're offering so that we can do some marketing and get a whole bunch of recurring mows, and everybody get out there and do them. And if you are doing projects, you could put the other guys on routes, mowing routes, and then you and the GMs can get in there and knock out the projects yourself, whatever you've currently got on the schedule. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and sometimes if you have a good plan set out, it's not going to be forever, but for a period of time, it's very humbling, especially if you've been the kind of person who's been out there in front of other people and actually given them advice for their businesses. It's extremely humbling to come back and feel like you're backtracking. It's not a demotion. It's doing what's necessary. It's getting in there and grinding and doing what you have to do. And the times you feel like you're backtracking, it's not. It's regrouping. It's being humble enough. It's taking advice from other people who are ahead of you and have made mistakes, or they've put themselves out there under too much debt. There's it's a comeback. It's a comeback to get you back up to zero. And I've gone through hard times in my life, and at first my goal was to get to zero. And then from zero, I thought I would create another plan going forward. So set incremental goals for paying off debts. Sometimes you're going to have to get rid of some team members, and that is the most gut-wrenching thing. And I'll probably talk about that on the next episode. That's a topic that's extremely difficult to deal with, but especially in the lawn care and landscape industry, it's a lot of seasonal work. So you're all going to deal with that if you don't have winter services, Christmas lights, or snow services in the winter. You're going to have to rethink how you hire and how you handle everything with your current hires, depending on where you are in your the growth of your business. So I think I shared everything that I wanted to share with you today. One more I'll share, bringing back people you fired. So I always said that I wouldn't do that. I've never in the long run regretted a fire. I've always found that once you do fire somebody that you felt were poisoned, there was a lot of issues with them, is that the team actually comes back to you and thanks you, because we have inspired these people and we have raised them in our company to know that you don't tattle on people. You try to support them and help them, and you try to lock down and do what you're supposed to do. And so what I would hear from these people is the feedback that so and so wasn't pulling their weight. They had said certain things, they had done certain things, they had a lot of negativity towards the company. Sadly, you find that stuff out later, and unless one of your employees had the guts to come forward and say, this is happening, this is happening to a lot of employees and affecting the whole team, and then you would fire them. But a lot of times it's not till after. So that being said, I've never in the long run regretted a fire or felt it was the wrong thing to do later. And it all pans out, it all works out. So I would say a lot of times you do need to follow your gut, and you need to listen to the other team members. If they're legit people who have always carried their load and not complained and that sort of thing, it's important to listen to them in making those decisions. But we had one time where we had our offsite, and it was at a restaurant, and I had an employee who had He had bipolar. He was very paranoid and anxious to come to the offsite. He had never come. And so I asked him to please come, and I would put him with the person he was most comfortable with, which was a project manager. So I let the project manager know, hey, I want him to be able to come and enjoy the time. I know he will. There's no pressure. He doesn't have to talk, but he can just listen to the things that are happening in the company. So what I didn't know is this employee had drank quite a bit before he even came, which he told me later to calm down his nerves and be able to come to the event. Then during the meal, he had several large beers. And then after the dinner was over and the meeting, he went to, and everybody had left. He and the project manager separately had gone to the bar of the restaurant. And the project manager, they weren't together or hadn't come together, but the project manager had a few drinks. Well, this guy, he had several shots on top of what he already had. So he was extremely drunk, but it wouldn't have seemed that way because nobody saw all of the drinking before. Then maybe other people didn't see how much he drank at the meal. And then there were the shots that nobody knew after. The next morning at 5 o'clock, his wife called me and she said he had never come home and that now he was in the hospital. So, what had happened was he left after everybody else, and where the restaurant was came down and then it curved a little bit. Well, when it curved, he went right off the edge. And off the edge was a whole rocky area, logs, trees, and then the ocean. And he had went off there. Thankfully didn't go in the ocean, but he flipped the car several times. And so he had, when you're on bipolar and you have your meds and then you're mixing that with all this alcohol, it was not good. So they took him to the hospital and then checked him out, and then they arrested him for, of course, a DUI, took his license away, and he's so lucky that it was late enough that he didn't hit anybody else or hurt any people that would have typically been on the beach. So we had to let him go because we have a policy that you have to have a valid driver's license to work for us. Because our goal with P4P is to get people on solo routes. And I couldn't expect that somebody else would have to constantly wait for this person, deal with this person, because of their issues and no license. So we let him go, and he was able to get a job somewhere else where it didn't require driving. And then he had his appointments with court for all those months. And then, for the first time ever, I let him come back. And it was with the understanding that he had a one chance, and he had never drank on the job. So I knew that wasn't going to be an issue. And he was also getting help and counseling for the drinking, and he was having his court cases. Of course, this very much affected his family with the income and then all of his issues that they had already been helping him with the bipolar, and then adding this onto it. The whole thing was because he was anxious to come. I guess it's my fault for trying to talk him into coming. So we did take him back. With the court, there was an arrangement that he could drive to work as long as he was driving to work and in a company vehicle driving, and then he was fine. So that was the first time. He was so grateful. He came back. It wasn't that he was a bad employee or did bad work, but we accepted him back, and then he continued to work with us until later on he was able to get a full-time position in the winter. A lot of our guys, we encourage them to kind of plan on having something else, and he got a job in a college to be able to do full-time maintenance work. So it'd be inside and it would be full-time, and he moved on to that. But it was very positive. Everything about it was great. And so, what we think, in conclusion, is a demotion isn't always a demotion. Sometimes it's a second chance. And sometimes it's just, I need to get rid of my ego and do hard things and do what needs to be done, and accept that maybe I didn't make right decisions in the past, but I'm turning a corner and I'm going to fix this thing, and I'm going to be transparent with my team where we are with the numbers. And if you have been a great leader and a great boss and been good to your employees, and they have caught the vision of the company, they're going to be right with you. And they are going to do what it takes also. They're going to watch you go out in the field. They're going to watch you do estimates. And they, in turn, are going to do the same. And then together, you can pull the company back up and be successful. And you will be better for it going forward. I hope this helps a little bit. You can always contact me if you have specific questions or issues at liz@augustalawncareservices.com. Thank you and have a great day.